I was staring at my computer screen in complete darkness when I realized the HOA had actually done it this time. They had cut my power in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, and I was about to lose 3 hours of unsaved work on a client presentation that was due by 5. My name is Nathan Daniels, and I had been living in the Meadowbrook Estates community in Gilbert, Arizona, for 2 years. Those 2 years had been a slow descent into madness, courtesy of one particularly determined HOA board president named Patricia Hoffman. The power outage was not a coincidence. Just that morning, I had received yet another certified letter from the HOA demanding payment for what they called violations. According to their records, I owed them $1,200 in fines. The violations ranged from having my trash cans visible from the street for more than 2 hours after collection, to parking my work van in my own driveway, to having grass that was allegedly 3/4 of an inch too long. I had contested every single one of these fines through the proper channels, sending detailed letters with photographs and timestamps proving that most of these violations never actually occurred. But Patricia ran the HOA board like her personal fiefdom, and she had decided I was her enemy the day I moved in. It all started because I had painted my front door. The previous owner had left it a faded, peeling mess of what might have once been burgundy. I repainted it a deep navy blue, which according to the HOA guidelines was an approved color. I even had the paint chip matched to the exact shade listed in their handbook. But Patricia insisted it was too dark, too bold, too something. She wanted me to repaint it beige. When I refused and showed her the guidelines proving I was right, she made it her personal mission to find any possible violation she could pin on me. Now, sitting in my dark house with my laptop battery draining, I grabbed my phone and called the electric company. Arizona Public Service answered after a brief hold, and I explained my situation to a customer service representative named Mark. "Sir, let me pull up your account," Mark said. I could hear typing in the background. "Okay, I see here that your account is current. You have a credit balance actually. But there is a note here that service was disconnected at the request of the property owner." "I am the property owner," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I own this house outright. Nobody has the authority to disconnect my power except me or you if I do not pay my bill." More typing. The request came from a Patricia Hoffman. She identified herself as representing the Homeowners Association and stated she had legal authority to request disconnection due to unpaid fines. My hand tightened around the phone. That is completely illegal. An HOA cannot cut off someone's utilities. That is not even remotely within their authority. "I agree with you, sir, and I am very sorry this happened. This should never have been processed. Let me get my supervisor on the line." I waited, listening to hold music while I processed what had just happened. Patricia had called the electric company and somehow convinced them to shut off my power. This was not just an overreach of authority. This was potentially criminal. The supervisor, a woman named Jennifer, came on the line. "Mr. Daniels, I have reviewed your account and the disconnection order. I need to be very clear with you that this disconnection should not have occurred. An HOA does not have the authority to request service disconnection, and our employee who processed this request did not follow proper protocol. We are going to send a technician to your location immediately to restore service. This is our highest priority." "How immediately?" I asked. "Within the next 2 hours. I am flagging this as an emergency reconnection. There will be no reconnection fee, and we will be crediting your account for the inconvenience. Additionally, we are going to need to file a report on this, because what your HOA did constitutes tampering with utility service, which is illegal under Arizona law." What kind of consequences are we talking about? I asked. The tampering penalties can include fines up to $10,000 per incident, and in some cases criminal charges. We take this very seriously, Mr. Daniels. Utility tampering can be life-threatening, especially here in Arizona where air conditioning is not a luxury but a necessity. I felt a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. Patricia had finally gone too far. I want to file a formal complaint. I also want documentation of everything that happened here because I am going to need it. Absolutely. I will email you a complete incident report within the hour. Again, I am very sorry this happened. This is not how we do business, and we will be having serious discussions with the employee who processed this request. After hanging up with the electric company, I sat in my dark living room and considered my options. It was October, so at least the heat was not unbearable, but this was still Arizona and my house was already getting warm. My home office, where I ran my consulting business, was essentially useless without power. I had mobile hotspot on my phone, but my laptop was down to 30% battery. I decided to call my lawyer. I had retained him 6 months ago when the HOA violations started piling up. His name was Marcus Webb, and he specialized in HOA disputes. When I explained what happened, he was silent for a long moment. "Nathan, they actually cut your power." His voice was incredulous. "They called the electric company and requested disconnection. APS is sending someone out to restore it, and they said what the HOA did is illegal tampering." It is absolutely illegal tampering. It is also potentially criminal harassment, illegal interference with utility service, and possibly even extortion depending on what was said in their communications to you. Do you have the letters they sent demanding payment? Every single one. I have been documenting everything. Good. Keep doing that. I am going to draft a lawsuit. This is beyond HOA overreach. This is actionable, and we are going to make sure they face serious consequences. In the meantime, do not communicate with Patricia or anyone on the HOA board except through writing, and send me copies of everything. After hanging up with Marcus, I walked outside. The October sun was still bright and warm, and several of my neighbors were out. Across the street, I saw Tom Reynolds washing his car. Tom was a retired firefighter who had lived in Meadowbrook Estates for 10 years, long before Patricia took over the HOA board. "Power out," Tom called over. "The HOA cut it," I said, walking across the street. Tom turned off his hose. "They what?" I explained the situation. Tom's expression grew darker as I talked. "That woman is out of control," Tom said when I finished. "She has been driving people crazy for 3 years now. Half the neighborhood hates her, but nobody wants to deal with the hassle of fighting the HOA. We all just pay the stupid fines and try to stay under her radar." "How much have you paid in fines?" I asked. Tom shrugged. "Maybe 3,000 or 4,000 over the years. Stupid stuff. My house numbers were 2 inches off center. I had a decorative flag that was not on the approved list. My mailbox was not the right shade of black. It is extortion, but what are you going to do?" "You fight back," I said. "What she did today is actually illegal. The electric company is restoring my power and filing tampering charges. I am also suing." Tom looked interested. "You know what? I am tired of this. If you are organizing something, count me in. I bet a lot of other people in this neighborhood would join too." "Let me talk to my lawyer first," I said. "But yeah, maybe it is time we all stood up to her together." I went back inside to wait for the electric company. While I waited, I opened my laptop and started typing up everything that had happened, including exact times and everything that was said. My laptop died halfway through, so I switched to my phone and kept typing. Documentation was going to be key. The APS truck arrived an hour and 40 minutes later. The technician, whose name tag read David, looked apologetic as he approached my door. "Mr. Daniels, I am here to restore your service. I am really sorry about what happened. This should never have occurred." "I appreciate you coming out quickly," I said. David went to work on the meter outside. While he worked, a silver Mercedes SUV pulled up in front of my house. I knew that car. Patricia Hoffman climbed out, wearing her usual outfit of expensive athleisure wear and oversized sunglasses. She was 52 years old, bleach blonde, and had the kind of self-assured walk that came from never being told no. "Excuse me," Patricia called out to David. "What are you doing?" David looked up from the meter. "Restoring service, madam. This resident has unpaid fines to the Homeowners Association. The power needs to remain disconnected until he pays." David straightened up. "Madam, I do not know who you are, but you have no authority over utility service. Only the property owner or APS can make decisions about this account." Patricia walked closer, her heels clicking on the concrete. "I am the HOA president. This resident violated community rules and owes significant fines. We requested disconnection through proper channels." "No, madam, you did not. What you did was commit utility tampering, which is a crime in Arizona. APS will be filing charges. Now I need you to step back so I can finish my work." Patricia's face flushed red. She turned to me. "Nathan, this is ridiculous. Just pay your fines and we can resolve this whole situation." "I do not owe you anything, Patricia," I said calmly. "Every violation you cited was either fabricated or wrongly applied. I contested them all through proper channels, which you ignored. And now you have committed an actual crime by cutting my power." "I did no such thing. I simply informed the utility company that there were issues with this property." "You requested disconnection of service under false pretenses," I said. "That is tampering. The electric company is filing charges and I am suing you and the HOA. You went way too far this time." Patricia's expression shifted from anger to something resembling concern. "You cannot sue the HOA. We have legal protections." "Those protections do not cover criminal activity," I said. "Cutting someone's power is not an HOA enforcement action. It is illegal." David finished with the meter. "Service is restored, Mr. Daniels. You should have power now." I thanked him and went inside to check. Sure enough, lights came on, my refrigerator hummed back to life, and my computer monitor blinked on. When I came back outside, Patricia was still arguing with David. "This is not over," Patricia said to me. "You still owe those fines and I will pursue every legal avenue to collect them." "You do that," I said. "My lawyer will be in touch." Patricia got back in her Mercedes and drove off. David shook his head as he packed up his equipment. "That lady is something else," he said. "I have been doing this job for 12 years, and I have never seen an HOA try to cut someone's power before. Most people do not even know it is possible to request disconnection if you are not the account holder." "How did she manage to convince your company to do it?" I asked. David looked uncomfortable. "Between you and me, the person who took her call was new and did not follow protocol. He should have verified that she had legal authority. Instead, he just processed the request. He is in serious trouble now. But your HOA president was also very convincing, apparently. She made it sound like there were safety issues with the property or something." "There are no safety issues," I said. "She just wanted to force me to pay fines for violations I never committed." "Well, she picked the wrong way to do it. APS does not play around with tampering charges. She's going to get hit with some serious fines, probably $10,000 or more." After David left, I spent the rest of the afternoon working on my client presentation and documenting everything that had happened. Marcus emailed me that evening with a draft lawsuit. It was brutal and comprehensive, naming both Patricia personally and the HOA as defendants. The charges included harassment, illegal interference with utility service, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violation of Arizona's homeowner rights statutes. Marcus was asking for compensatory damages, punitive damages, and attorney's fees. "This is a slam-dunk case," Marcus wrote in his email. "What she did is so clearly illegal that I cannot imagine any judge siding with her. The only question is how much we can get. I would estimate we are looking at 6 figures minimum once we factor in punitive damages and your attorney's fees." I slept better that night than I had in months, knowing that Patricia was finally going to face consequences for her actions. The next morning, I received an email from Jennifer at APS with the full incident report. It included transcripts of Patricia's call requesting disconnection, notes from the employee who processed it, and a detailed timeline of events. Reading Patricia's words in the transcript made me angry all over again. She had told the APS employee that I was running illegal business operations from my home, that there were safety hazards on the property, and that the HOA had legal authority to request disconnection. All lies. I forwarded the report to Marcus, who called me an hour later. "This is even better than I thought," Marcus said. "She made false statements to the utility company, which could potentially be fraud. I am also seeing grounds for defamation since she accused you of running illegal operations." "Nathan, this case gets stronger every time I look at it. What happens next?" I asked. "I filed the lawsuit today. She will be served within a few days. The HOA's insurance company will probably get involved, and they are going to be very unhappy when they see what she did. Most HOA insurance policies do not cover criminal activity or gross negligence, and this is both. There is a real chance Patricia will be personally liable for damages, not just the HOA." "Good," I said. That afternoon, I got a call from Tom Reynolds. "Nathan, I talked to some of the other neighbors about what happened yesterday. We want to organize a meeting. There are at least 15 households who are fed up with Patricia and the HOA board. We want to know what our options are. My lawyer is filing a lawsuit against her and the HOA," I said. "You are all welcome to join as co-plaintiffs if you have documented violations and fines. Let me talk to everyone and get back to you." Over the next 2 days, my phone did not stop ringing. Neighbors I barely knew called to share their own horror stories about Patricia and the HOA. There was Lisa Chen, who had been fined $800 for planting roses that were not on the approved plant list. There was Robert Martinez, who owed $2,000 in fines for parking his boat in his driveway overnight while he cleaned it. There was elderly Mrs. Dorothy Peterson, who had been fined $1,500 because her grass died during a particularly hot summer, even though she was on a fixed income and struggling to afford water bills. Each story made me angrier. Patricia was not just targeting me. She was systematically harassing everyone in the neighborhood, using the HOA as her personal weapon to control and punish anyone who did not meet her standards. Marcus was thrilled when I told him about the other potential plaintiffs. "This could turn into a class action lawsuit," he said. "If we can prove a pattern of harassment and abuse of authority, we could potentially get the entire HOA board removed and the association placed under court supervision." On Friday, 4 days after the power incident, Patricia was served with the lawsuit. I know this because she showed up at my house at 7 in the morning, pounding on my door. I answered in my pajamas, holding a cup of coffee. "You are suing me," Patricia shrieked. How dare you? I was performing my duties as HOA president. Your duties do not include cutting off my electricity, I said calmly. You committed a crime, Patricia. Multiple crimes, actually. This is absurd. The HOA has the right to enforce its rules, through legal means, sure, not by tampering with utility service. You need to leave my property now. I will not leave until we resolve this. Drop the lawsuit and pay your fines and we can forget this whole thing. That is not happening. You need to leave or I am calling the police. Patricia stepped closer, her face twisted with anger. You are going to regret this, Nathan. I will make your life miserable. I will fine you for every tiny thing. I will make it impossible for you to sell this house. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Please continue. My lawyer will love to hear these threats. Patricia froze, staring at the phone. Then she turned and stalked back to her car, getting in and slamming the door so hard I was surprised the window did not crack. I sent the video to Marcus immediately. He called back within minutes, laughing. She just threatened you on camera. Nathan, she is making this so easy. That is witness intimidation and harassment. I am going to file for a restraining order today. The restraining order was granted that afternoon. Patricia was legally prohibited from coming within 100 yards of me or my property, and from contacting me directly in any way. Meanwhile, APS followed through on their tampering charges. On the following Tuesday, I received a call from a detective with the Gilbert Police Department named Detective Sarah Morrison. Mr. Daniels, I am investigating the utility tampering incident involving your HOA. APS filed charges against Patricia Hoffman, and I wanted to get your statement. I spent an hour on the phone with Detective Morrison, walking through everything that had happened. She took detailed notes and asked sharp questions. This is pretty cut and dry, Detective Morrison said. Miss Hoffman had no legal authority to request disconnection of your utility service. She made false statements to the utility company to make it happen. That is tampering, and depending on how aggressive the prosecutor wants to be, it could also be fraud and making false statements. The utility company wants to pursue this, which means we are taking it seriously. What happens next? I asked. I will finish my investigation, which should take about a week. Then I will submit my report to the county attorney's office. They will decide whether to file criminal charges. Given the clear evidence here, I would say charges are likely. 2 weeks later, Patricia Hoffman was formally charged with utility tampering and making false statements to a utility company. Both were misdemeanors, but they carried potential jail time and significant fines. The neighborhood exploded with gossip. Suddenly, everyone was talking about Patricia's arrest. Some people were gleeful. Others were worried about what would happen to the HOA. Tom Reynolds organized a neighborhood meeting at his house. 23 households showed up, crowding into Tom's living room and spilling out onto his patio. Here is the situation, Tom said once everyone settled down. Patricia is facing criminal charges. Nathan is suing her and the HOA. A lot of us have been dealing with her abuse for years. I think it is time we take back our HOA. A woman named Jennifer Martin raised her hand. How do we do that? Patricia controls the board. She has 2 other members who do whatever she says. Marcus, who I had invited to the meeting, stood up. Under Arizona HOA law, residents can petition for a special election to recall board members. You need signatures from 20% of homeowners. This neighborhood has 240 homes, so you would need 48 signatures. Looking around this room, I think you can get that easily. What if Patricia fights the recall? Someone asked. She can try, but if you follow the proper procedures, there is not much she can do. The law is very clear on homeowner rights to recall board members. We spent the next hour organizing. Tom volunteered to lead the recall petition effort. Lisa Chen, who worked in marketing, offered to create flyers and social media posts. Robert Martinez, who was a retired paralegal, said he would help with the legal paperwork. I felt something I had not felt in 2 years: hope. We were actually going to fight back, and we were going to win. The petition drive took less than a week. Tom gathered 78 signatures, far more than the required 48. Homeowners were eager to sign, with many sharing their own stories of harassment and unreasonable fines. Patricia tried to block the recall election, arguing that the petition was invalid on various technical grounds. But Robert Martinez had done his homework. The petition was flawless. The court-mandated special election was scheduled for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, my lawsuit was progressing. The HOA's insurance company had denied coverage, exactly as Marcus predicted. They argued that Patricia's actions were criminal and outside the scope of her authority, which meant the policy did not apply. Patricia had to hire her own lawyer, and discovery was revealing just how extensive her abuse had been. Marcus subpoenaed the HOA's records going back 3 years. What he found was shocking. Patricia had issued over 1,500 violations during her tenure as president. The neighborhood average for similar communities was around 200 violations. She had collected over $300,000 in fines, which was supposed to go into the HOA's operating account. But when Marcus examined the finances, large chunks of money were missing. "Nathan, I think she was embezzling," Marcus said during one of our meetings. "There are cash withdrawals and transfers that do not match up with any legitimate HOA expenses. We are talking about $60,000 or $70,000 that just vanished." "Are you serious?" "Completely. I am going to have to report this to the police. If she was stealing HOA funds, that is a felony." Detective Morrison was very interested in Marcus's findings. She obtained a warrant for the HOA's financial records and brought in a forensic accountant. 3 weeks later, Patricia Hoffman was arrested again, this time for felony embezzlement and fraud. The evidence was overwhelming. Patricia had been using HOA funds to pay for personal expenses, including vacations, shopping, and even part of her Mercedes payment. She had covered her tracks by issuing excessive fines to homeowners, then skimming the money as it came in. The total amount embezzled was $78,000. The neighborhood meeting after Patricia's arrest was very different from the first one. This time, nearly 100 people showed up. The mood was a mixture of vindication and anger. People were glad Patricia was finally facing justice, but furious that she had been stealing from them for years. Every time we paid one of her bogus fines, she was pocketing the money, Lisa Chen said. "I paid $800 for those roses, $800 that she stole from me." "We all want that money back," someone else said. "Can we get restitution?" Marcus addressed the crowd. "If Patricia is convicted, the judge can order restitution as part of her sentence. Additionally, the HOA itself may be liable for the stolen funds, and you could potentially sue to recover them. But that is separate from the recall election and the lawsuit against the HOA for the harassment." The recall election happened on schedule. Patricia was removed from the HOA board by a vote of 212 to 6. The 2 board members who had supported her were also recalled. New board members were elected, including Tom Reynolds, Lisa Chen, and a retired accountant named William Foster, who immediately began working to clean up the HOA's finances. One of the new board's first actions was to review all violations and fines issued during Patricia's tenure. They formed a review committee that included Marcus as a legal advisor. Over the next 2 months, they went through every single violation. The results were stunning. The committee determined that approximately 70% of the violations Patricia had issued were either completely fabricated or improperly applied. They voted to rescind those violations and refund the fines. I got a check for $1,200, the full amount Patricia had claimed I owed. Lisa Chen got back her $800. Mrs. Dorothy Peterson cried when she received her $1,500 refund, saying it would help her pay for medication. Not everyone got refunds, though. The money Patricia had embezzled was gone, spent on her personal expenses. The HOA only had about $40,000 in its operating account, which was not nearly enough to refund everyone she had stolen from. Marcus filed a separate lawsuit on behalf of the HOA to recover the embezzled funds from Patricia's personal assets. Patricia's criminal trials were scheduled for early the following year. She was facing one trial for the utility tampering charges and a separate trial for the embezzlement. Her lawyer tried to negotiate plea deals, but the prosecutors were not interested in going easy on her. The utility tampering case in particular had generated media attention, with local news stations running stories about the HOA president who illegally cut off someone's power. My civil lawsuit against Patricia and the HOA settled before trial. The new HOA board, eager to put the whole mess behind them, agreed to pay me $75,000 in damages. Patricia was personally liable for an additional $50,000 in punitive damages, which Marcus would attempt to collect from her assets. The utility tampering trial happened in February. I was called as a witness and spent 3 hours on the stand, describing what happened and how it affected me. The APS representatives testified about their policies and why what Patricia did was so dangerous. In Arizona's extreme heat, cutting someone's power could be life-threatening, especially for elderly residents or people with medical conditions. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before finding Patricia guilty on both counts. The judge sentenced her to 90 days in jail, suspended with probation, and ordered her to pay $15,000 in fines to APS, plus restitution to me for lost work and damages. The embezzlement trial was scheduled for April. The evidence was so overwhelming that Patricia's lawyer advised her to take a plea deal. She agreed to plead guilty to felony embezzlement in exchange for a recommended sentence of 2 years in state prison. The judge was not bound by the recommendation, though, and given Patricia's lack of remorse throughout the process, there was a real chance she would get more time. I attended the sentencing hearing in May. The courtroom was packed with residents from Meadowbrook Estates. Tom Reynolds was there, along with Lisa Chen, Mrs. Peterson, and dozens of others. We all wanted to see justice done. The prosecutor laid out Patricia's crimes in detail. She had betrayed the trust of her community, stolen money from her neighbors, and abused her authority as HOA president to harass and intimidate people. She had shown no remorse and had even attempted to threaten witnesses, referring to the video I had taken of her at my doorstep. Patricia's lawyer tried to paint her as a dedicated community volunteer who made mistakes. He talked about her charity work and her years of service to the HOA. It rang hollow given everything she had done. Then it was time for victim impact statements. Mrs. Peterson went first, walking slowly to the podium with her cane. "I am 83 years old," Mrs. Peterson said, her voice shaking but clear. "I have lived in my home for 15 years. It is where my husband died, where I raised my children when they visited, where I plan to spend the rest of my life. Patricia Hoffman tried to take that away from me. She fined me for things I could not control, like my grass dying in the summer. I was on a fixed income. I could not afford the water bills to keep everything green. She did not care. She just wanted her money. When I found out she was stealing from me, I felt sick. That $1,500 she took from me was supposed to be for my medications. I had to choose between paying her bogus fines or buying my heart medicine. That is not a choice anyone should have to make. There was not a dry eye in the courtroom. Several other residents gave statements, each one detailing how Patricia had affected their lives. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. Patricia Hoffman targeted me from the day I moved in. She issued false violations, stole my money, and then cut my power to try to force me to pay her. What she did was not just an abuse of HOA authority. It was criminal. It was cruel. And I hope the court sends a clear message that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated. The judge listened to everything, then took a short recess to consider the sentence. When she returned, she looked stern. "Miss Hoffman, I have reviewed all the evidence in this case, along with the evidence from your utility tampering conviction," the judge said. "What you did was a betrayal of your community on multiple levels. You were elected to serve your neighbors, and instead you used your position to steal from them and harass them. You showed no remorse throughout this process. In fact, you attempted to intimidate witnesses and continued to abuse your authority even after being caught. The recommended sentence of 2 years is not sufficient. I am sentencing you to 4 years in the Arizona Department of Corrections, with no possibility of early release for the first 2 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA and all affected homeowners, totaling $78,000 plus interest. If you cannot pay this amount, your assets will be liquidated to satisfy the debt." Patricia's face went white. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, but she shook him off. She turned to look at the gallery, at all of us sitting there watching her downfall. For a moment I thought she might say something, but instead she just turned back around and stared straight ahead as the bailiff led her away in handcuffs. The courtroom erupted in quiet conversation as people filed out. In the hallway, Tom Reynolds shook my hand. "You did it, Nathan. You actually did it. You stood up to her when the rest of us were too scared and you brought her down." "We all did it together," I said. "If everyone had not come forward with their stories and supported the recall, this would not have happened." Lisa Chen hugged me. "My kids can finally play in the front yard without me worrying that Patricia will find some violation to cite me for. Thank you." Over the next few months, life in Meadowbrook Estates slowly returned to normal. The new HOA board under Tom Reynolds' leadership took a completely different approach. They focused on actual community needs like maintaining common areas and organizing neighborhood events, rather than hunting for violations. They revised the guidelines to be more reasonable and clearly defined. They established an appeal process for violations that was actually fair and transparent. The HOA's insurance company agreed to cover some of the costs of refunding improperly issued fines, which helped restore the operating budget. Marcus successfully liquidated some of Patricia's assets, including her Mercedes and some jewelry, which provided additional funds for restitution. I finally felt like I could relax in my own home. No more certified letters threatening fines. No more worrying that every small thing I did would result in a violation. My navy blue door, the one that started this whole mess, remained exactly as it was, and nobody said a word about it. The APS tampering fines against Patricia were also paid, though it took liquidating most of her savings. Jennifer from APS called me personally to let me know the case was closed. "Mr. Daniels, I wanted to thank you for your patience throughout this process," Jennifer said. "Because of what happened to you, we completely revised our disconnection request procedures. No one will ever be able to do what Ms. Hoffman did again. All requests now go through multiple levels of verification, and we require legal documentation of authority. You helped us prevent this from happening to anyone else. That felt good. What happened to me was terrible, but at least something positive came from it. Marcus closed out the legal cases in late summer. Between the settlement with the HOA, the punitive damages from Patricia, and the restitution orders, I ended up recovering all my costs and then some. More importantly, I had my peace of mind back. One evening in September, almost a year after Patricia cut my power, the neighborhood had a block party. It was Tom's idea, a way to celebrate the community coming together and moving past the Patricia era. People brought food and drinks, kids played in the street, and someone set up a small stage for music. I was manning the grill, cooking burgers and hot dogs when Tom came over with a beer for me. "You know, Nathan, when you first moved in, I thought you were going to be just another person who paid the fines and kept his head down," Tom said. "I am glad I was wrong." "I am glad too," I said, flipping a burger. "Though I wish it had not taken getting my power cut off to finally do something." "Sometimes it takes something extreme to make people realize they have to fight back," Tom said. "But you did fight back and you won. We all won." Mrs. Peterson walked over slowly, holding a plate with a piece of cake. "Nathan, dear, I made this for you. German chocolate, your favorite." "How did you know that was my favorite?" I asked, surprised. She smiled. "I pay attention. You bought one from the bakery last month. I saw the box. Anyway, I wanted to thank you properly. What you did, standing up to that horrible woman, it changed everything for all of us." "You are very welcome, Mrs. Peterson. And thank you for the cake." As the sun set and the party continued, I looked around at my neighbors, people I had barely known a year ago but who had become something like family through our shared struggle. We had been through something difficult together, and we had come out stronger. My phone buzzed with an email. It was from Marcus. The subject line read, "Final restitution payment received." I opened it and read that Patricia had made her final payment from prison earnings and liquidated assets. The full $78,000 in embezzled funds had been recovered and distributed to the affected homeowners. My portion was already deposited in my account. I forwarded the email to Tom, who was talking to Lisa Chen by the beverage table. He checked his phone, read it, and let out a whoop. "Everyone, listen up," Tom called out. The music stopped and people turned to listen. "I just got word that the final restitution payment from Patricia Hoffman has been processed. Everyone who was owed money has been paid back in full." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Someone started chanting, "Justice served," and others joined in. As the party wound down later that night, I helped Tom clean up. We picked up paper plates and cups, folded tables, and took down decorations. "You know what the best part of all this is?" Tom asked as we worked. "What?" We proved that HOAs do not have to be nightmares. They can actually serve the community if the right people are in charge. Look at what we have done in the last year. We fixed the playground. We repaved the main road. We organized events like this. And we did it all without harassing anyone or issuing bogus fines. "You are right," I said. "The problem was never the HOA structure itself. It was Patricia abusing that structure for her own ego and profit." "Exactly. And now everyone in the neighborhood knows they have a voice. They know they can speak up if something is not right. That is power." I drove home that night feeling content in a way I had not felt in a long time. My house, my dark blue door, my slightly imperfect lawn, all of it was mine without fear of persecution. The fight had been exhausting and expensive and time-consuming, but it had been worth it. The next morning, I was working in my home office when my doorbell rang. I answered it to find a delivery person with a large package. "Nathan Daniels," he asked. "That is me. Sign here, please." I signed and took the package inside. It was from the Arizona Department of Corrections. Confused, I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter and a check. The letter was from the prison where Patricia was serving her sentence. "Dear Mr. Daniels," it read. "Enclosed, please find a check for $500, representing prisoner earnings from Patricia Hoffman to be applied toward her restitution obligations to you. Per the court order, 30% of all prisoner earnings are garnished for restitution until the full amount is satisfied. This is the first of ongoing monthly payments." I stared at the check. Patricia was working in prison, earning maybe $1 an hour, and a third of it was being taken to pay back the people she had wronged. It would take her years to pay off everything she owed, years of prison labor while she served her sentence. I did not feel sorry for her. She had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. But I did feel a sense of closure. The system had worked. Justice had been served, not just in punishment but in making things right for the victims. I deposited the check and went back to work. Just another normal day in my house in Meadowbrook Estates. Over the following months, life continued to improve in the neighborhood. The new HOA board was transparent and responsive. When issues came up, they were handled reasonably and fairly. Violations were issued only for legitimate problems, and the fines were proportional and designed to encourage correction rather than punish. Tom Reynolds proved to be an excellent HOA president. He had a monthly newsletter that went out to all residents, detailing upcoming projects, financial reports, and community events. He held open office hours twice a month where anyone could come talk to the board about concerns or ideas. It was everything an HOA should be. I even got involved myself, volunteering to help with the neighborhood website and social media presence. Lisa Chen and I worked together to create a resource where residents could easily access HOA documents, meeting minutes, and community information. We also set up a system where people could submit maintenance requests or violation concerns online, creating a transparent record of everything. The story of Patricia and what happened in Meadowbrook Estates spread beyond our neighborhood. Local news stations did follow-up stories after her sentencing. A few national news outlets picked it up as an example of HOA abuse. Marcus even got calls from lawyers in other states asking for advice on similar cases. I was interviewed for an article in a legal magazine about homeowner rights and HOA overreach. The article used our case as a cautionary tale about what can happen when HOA boards are not properly supervised and when homeowners do not exercise their rights. The key lesson from the Meadowbrook Estates case, the article quoted Marcus saying, is that homeowners have significant legal protections, but they have to be willing to use them. Nathan Daniels could have just paid the fines and moved on. Instead, he documented everything, hired a lawyer, and fought back. When the HOA crossed the line into criminal activity by tampering with his utilities, he had all the evidence needed to bring serious consequences. Other homeowners should take note. You have rights, you have power, and you do not have to accept abuse from your HOA. I framed that article and hung it in my home office, a reminder of what we had accomplished. In December, more than a year after the power incident, I received a call from Detective Morrison. "Mr. Daniels, I wanted to let you know that the case is officially closed," she said. "All charges have been resolved, all appeals have been exhausted, and Patricia Hoffman is serving her sentence. I also wanted to thank you. Cases like this, where victims stand up and see things through, they make a difference. A lot of people would have just let it go." "I am glad I did not," I said. "Me too. Take care of yourself, Mr. Daniels." After hanging up, I sat at my desk and thought about everything that had happened. It started with a door. A navy blue door that I painted according to the rules, but that Patricia did not like. From that simple disagreement, she had escalated into a campaign of harassment that eventually led to her cutting my power, stealing thousands of dollars from the community, and ultimately going to prison. All of it could have been avoided if she had just let me have my blue door, but she could not. She needed control, needed to dominate, needed to be right, and that need destroyed her life and nearly destroyed the neighborhood. I learned a lot through the experience. I learned that standing up for yourself, even when it is hard and scary, is worth it. I learned that documentation is crucial. I learned that communities are stronger when people work together. And I learned that sometimes the person with the most authority is the one most desperately in need of oversight. Christmas in Meadowbrook Estates that year was special. The HOA organized a holiday lights contest, but it was friendly and fun rather than another opportunity to issue violations. Tom and his family won with an elaborate display that included animated reindeer and a light show synchronized to music. I kept my decorations simple, just some white lights along the roofline and a wreath on my blue door. No violations, no fines, no threatening letters, just quiet enjoyment of my home during the holidays. Mrs. Peterson invited me over for Christmas dinner. She had no family nearby, and she did not want to be alone. I brought wine and dessert, and we spent a pleasant evening talking and laughing. She told me stories about her late husband and her children when they were young. I told her about my work and my plans for the new year. "You know, Nathan," Mrs. Peterson said as I was leaving, "what you did for this neighborhood, it gave me my home back. I was so stressed all the time under Patricia, worrying about every little thing, afraid I would lose my house because I could not afford her ridiculous fines. Now I can just live here and be happy. That is a gift." I hugged her carefully, mindful of her frailness. "I am glad, Mrs. Peterson. You deserve to be happy in your home." As I walked back across the street to my house, I looked up at the Arizona sky, clear and full of stars. The December air was cool and comfortable. Lights twinkled on houses up and down the block. Music played softly from someone's outdoor speakers. Kids rode new bicycles in driveways, showing off their Christmas presents. It was peaceful. It was normal. It was what a neighborhood should be. I went inside, locked my blue door behind me, and smiled. We had won. Not just legally, not just financially, but in every way that mattered. We had taken back our community from someone who tried to rule it like a tyrant. We had proven that homeowners have power when they stand together. And we had created something better in the aftermath. The monthly checks from Patricia's prison earnings continued to arrive, a reminder that justice was ongoing. Each check was small, but they added up over time. More importantly, they represented accountability. Patricia was paying for what she did, literally and figuratively, and would continue to do so for years. The HOA thrived under the new leadership. Property values in Meadowbrook Estates actually increased, which was ironic given that Patricia always claimed her strict enforcement was necessary to maintain values. It turned out that what actually maintained property values was having a functional, fair HOA that people wanted to live under, not a dictatorial one that drove people away. New families moved into the neighborhood, and we welcomed them warmly. At HOA meetings, Tom made sure to explain to newcomers that we had been through some difficult times but had emerged stronger. He was always transparent about what happened with Patricia, not to dwell on the past, but to make sure everyone understood how seriously we took accountability and fairness. I became friends with many of my neighbors in a way I never had before the conflict with Patricia. Shared struggle creates bonds, and we had definitely struggled together. Tom and I had monthly dinners at different restaurants, talking about everything from sports to politics to HOA business. Lisa Chen and her husband invited me to their kids' birthday parties. Mrs. Peterson and I had a standing coffee date every Sunday morning. My business flourished without the constant stress of HOA harassment. I took on new clients and even hired a part-time assistant. My home office, the one that had sat dark and useless when Patricia cut my power, was now a productive space where I did work I was proud of. Sometimes I thought about what would have happened if I had just paid those first fines. If I had repainted my door beige and kept my head down and accepted Patricia's authority. I would have paid $1,200, then more violations would have followed, more fines, more harassment. I would have been miserable in my own home. And Patricia would have continued her abuse and embezzlement unchecked, hurting more people, stealing more money. By fighting back, I had not only saved myself but helped save the entire neighborhood. That was worth all the stress and expense and time. In February, I got an email from Marcus with an update I had not expected. Patricia's lawyer had filed an appeal on her sentence, arguing that 4 years was excessive for a first-time offender. The appeal was denied. The appellate court's decision was blunt. Patricia's crimes were serious, her abuse of authority was egregious, and her lack of remorse warranted the full sentence. The 4 years would stand. I forwarded the email to Tom, who shared it with the neighborhood through the newsletter. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People were glad that Patricia was not getting off easy, that she would serve her full sentence and pay her full restitution. Spring came to Arizona, bringing warm days and cool nights. The HOA organized a neighborhood cleanup day, and over 50 people showed up to help. We painted the community playground equipment, replanted the entrance landscaping, and power washed the sidewalks. It was hard work, but it felt good to improve our neighborhood together. During a break, I sat with Tom and Lisa Chen under the shade of a Palo Verde tree, drinking cold water and watching kids play on the freshly painted swings. "You know what I am most proud of?" Lisa asked. "It is not that we got rid of Patricia or that we recovered the money. It is that we created something better. We turned a bad situation into an opportunity to build a real community." "Agreed," Tom said. "We could have just replaced Patricia with another board and gone back to normal. Instead, we reimagined what our HOA could be. We made it transparent and fair and actually helpful. And we proved that homeowners do not have to be victims," I added. "We have rights and power, and we can use them." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the neighborhood at work and play around us. The same neighborhood that had been under Patricia's thumb for 3 years. The same houses that had received countless violation notices. The same homeowners who had paid tens of thousands of dollars in bogus fines. All transformed by people deciding they had had enough and were willing to fight for something better. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Peterson. "Nathan, dear, could you help me with my computer? It is doing something strange." I smiled and texted back that I would be over after the cleanup day finished. Mrs. Peterson was constantly having minor tech issues, and I had become her unofficial IT support. I did not mind. She always had fresh cookies or cake, and I enjoyed her company. The cleanup day wrapped up in late afternoon. Tom gave a short speech thanking everyone for their hard work and reminding them of the upcoming HOA meeting. Then everyone dispersed, tired but satisfied with what we had accomplished. I walked over to Mrs. Peterson's house. She met me at the door with her usual warm smile and a plate of oatmeal cookies. "Thank you for coming, dear. My computer keeps showing pop-up messages, and I do not know what they mean." I spent 30 minutes removing some adware from her browser and updating her antivirus software. While I worked, she talked about her week and asked about mine. It was pleasant and comfortable, the kind of intergenerational friendship that enriches both lives. As I was leaving, Mrs. Peterson stopped me at the door. "Nathan, I never properly thanked you for what you did." Fighting Patricia, standing up for all of us. I was so scared of her. She threatened to put a lien on my house over those fines. At my age, the stress of potentially losing my home, it was too much. "You gave me my peace back. I will never forget that." I hugged her. "You are welcome, Mrs. Peterson." I am just glad everything worked out. Walking home in the dusk, I reflected on how much my life had changed in 2 years. I had moved to Meadowbrook Estates, expecting a quiet suburban lifestyle. Instead, I had gotten into a war with my HOA president, had my power illegally cut off, sued and won, helped send a criminal to prison, and transformed my neighborhood into a genuine community. If someone had told me when I painted that blue door that it would lead to all of this, I would not have believed them. But life is unpredictable, and sometimes standing up for something small leads to something much bigger. The checks from Patricia's prison earnings continued to arrive monthly, like clockwork. Each one was a reminder that actions have consequences and that justice, while sometimes slow, does eventually arrive. Summer brought intense heat to Arizona, the kind of heat where you appreciate air conditioning and electricity in a whole new way. I never forgot what it felt like to have my power cut off, to sit in a darkening house knowing someone had deliberately done this to me. It made me grateful for every cool breeze from my AC, every cold drink from my refrigerator, every working light in my home. The HOA organized summer evening events when the heat was bearable. Movie nights in the park, ice cream socials, water balloon fights for the kids. These were the kinds of things HOAs should do, bringing people together rather than tearing them apart. In August, I was working in my office when I got a call from a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Daniels." "This is Karen Wu from Channel 12 News. We are doing a follow-up story on HOA abuse cases, and we would love to interview you about what happened with Patricia Hoffman and Meadowbrook Estates. Are you interested?" I considered it. The story had already been told in various forms. But maybe one more telling, a follow-up showing how the neighborhood had recovered and thrived, would be worthwhile. "Sure," I said. "When were you thinking?" The interview took place at my house the following week. Karen Wu and her cameraman arrived in the morning when the light was good. She asked me to show her the infamous blue door, which I did. We did part of the interview standing in front of it. "So this is the door that started everything," Karen said to the camera. A simple navy blue door, painted according to HOA guidelines, but which the HOA president did not like. What seemed like a minor disagreement escalated into harassment, utility tampering, embezzlement, and ultimately a 4-year prison sentence. Nathan Daniels, looking back, "Do you regret painting your door this color?" I smiled. "Not for a second. I painted it according to the rules. I had every right to paint it this color. What I regret is that Patricia Hoffman chose to turn a non-issue into a conflict, but I do not regret standing up for myself and for my neighbors." We did the rest of the interview in my living room, talking about the power outage, the lawsuit, the recall election, and the transformation of the neighborhood. Karen also interviewed Tom Reynolds and Mrs. Peterson, getting their perspectives. The story aired 2 weeks later. It was a 10-minute segment during the evening news, titled "From HOA Hell to Community Heaven: One Neighborhood's Fight for Justice." It showed footage of Patricia being led away in handcuffs, interviews with residents, shots of our community events, and before and after comparisons of the HOA's approach. The response was immediate. My phone started ringing with calls from other people dealing with HOA problems, asking for advice. I referred most of them to Marcus, who was building a practice specializing in HOA disputes. Tom called me after the segment aired. "We are famous again," he said, laughing. "But you know what? I do not mind. If our story helps other people stand up to their abusive HOAs, that is a good thing." Fall arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and the neighborhood's favorite time of year. The HOA organized a Halloween event with trick-or-treating through the streets, a haunted house in the community center, and a costume contest. Over 300 people attended, including families from neighboring communities who had heard about how great Meadowbrook Estates had become. I dressed as a utility worker, complete with a hard hat and tool belt, as a tongue-in-cheek reference to the power incident. A lot of people got the joke and appreciated the humor. Being able to laugh about what had been a traumatic experience felt like another sign of healing. Mrs. Peterson won the costume contest for adults with her elaborate witch costume, complete with a light-up broomstick. She was delighted and gave a gracious acceptance speech thanking the HOA for organizing such a wonderful event. As the year drew to a close, the HOA board met to review the year and plan for the next one. I attended as a resident observer, something that was now normal and encouraged under the new transparent leadership. Tom presented a financial report showing the HOA in good health. Dues had been kept reasonable, expenses had been appropriate and well documented, and there was even a surplus that would be used for a new playground expansion. "This is what an HOA should look like," Tom said to the room. "Transparent, financially sound, serving the community. We have come a long way from where we were 2 years ago." Lisa Chen added, "And we need to stay vigilant. We cannot let what happened with Patricia happen again. That means continuing to be transparent, holding regular elections, and making sure homeowners know they have a voice." Everyone agreed. The trauma of Patricia's reign had taught us valuable lessons about accountability and oversight. We would not forget them. On New Year's Eve, as I sat on my back patio watching fireworks light up the Arizona sky, I thought about everything that had happened and everything I had learned. Fighting Patricia and the HOA had been exhausting and expensive, but it had also been empowering. I had learned that I was capable of standing up for myself, that I could navigate complex legal situations, that I could help lead a community to positive change. More than that, I had learned the value of community itself. Before the Patricia situation, I barely knew my neighbors. Now I had real friendships, people I cared about and who cared about me. We had been through something difficult together, and we had come out stronger. As the new year began, life in Meadowbrook Estates continued its positive trajectory. The neighborhood had become known throughout Gilbert as a well-run community with an engaged HOA and happy residents. Property values reflected this, increasing steadily. I expanded my business further, hiring 2 more employees and moving some of my operations out of my home office into a small commercial space. But I kept my home office for certain projects, enjoying the flexibility of working from home when I wanted. The monthly checks from Patricia continued, a steady reminder of justice being served. By my calculations, she would be paying restitution for at least another 2 years even after her release from prison. Her financial life was ruined, her reputation destroyed, her freedom taken. All because she could not accept that someone painted their door a color she did not like. There was a lesson in that about proportionality and perspective. Patricia had let something minor become an obsession, and that obsession destroyed her. If she had just let me have my blue door, If she had focused on actual community needs instead of petty violations, she would still be living her comfortable life. Instead, she was in prison, broke, and reviled by everyone who knew her story. I did not take pleasure in her downfall, but I did not feel sorry for her either. She had made her choices. She had chosen to harass, to steal, to abuse her authority. The consequences were just and proportional to her crimes. In March, I received notification that Patricia was coming up for a parole hearing. She had served less than a year of her 4-year sentence, but Arizona law required a hearing. Marcus told me not to worry. She has zero chance of getting parole, Marcus said. She has not served enough time, she still owes significant restitution, and the parole board will have access to all the victim impact statements from her sentencing. They will deny her. He was right. Patricia's parole was denied. She would serve at least another year before being eligible for another hearing. Life moved on. Seasons changed. The neighborhood continued to thrive. My business grew. My friendships deepened. The trauma of having my power cut off and fighting the HOA faded into memory. Though I never forgot the lessons learned. I kept my blue door exactly as it was, a symbol of standing up for what is right even when it is hard. Neighbors sometimes pointed it out to newcomers, telling the story of how that door changed everything. It became a minor landmark in Meadowbrook Estates, a reminder of where we had been and how far we had come. Years later, when people asked me about the whole situation, I always emphasized the same points. Document everything, know your rights, do not be afraid to fight back when you are being treated unjustly, and remember that communities are stronger when people stand together. Patricia Hoffman's story became a cautionary tale taught in HOA management classes and discussed in legal circles. Her name became synonymous with HOA abuse and what not to do as a board member. She had wanted power and control, and in seeking it so ruthlessly, she lost everything. Meanwhile, Meadowbrook Estates became a model for how HOAs should operate. Other communities sent representatives to our meetings to see how we ran things. Tom gave presentations at HOA conferences about transparent governance and community engagement. Our neighborhood was proof that HOAs could be positive forces when run properly. As for me, I lived happily in my house with my blue door, grateful for the community around me, proud of what we had accomplished together, and always ready to stand up for what is right. The fight had been worth it. Justice had been served, and life was good.